expert when it comes to live streaming. I'm still kind of a noob at this, but I think we're up and live. I'm going to give everybody a moment here to get in here. We're going to kind of wrap up my talk here on Bitcoin miners and why I think they've been underperforming. So let me make sure everything pops up okay for everybody. I'm not getting any video on my end yet. So let me make sure everything's okay. Okay, I think we're all good now. If you're here, make sure you say hello in the chat and give me your thoughts on this. But yeah, today I'm going to kind of put a bow on this whole discussion that we've been having. These live streams have been really successful for my channel. The first couple have 15,000 views a piece, and then the third one I did has like 8,000, and then today I'm hoping we can wrap this up. We've kind of nailed this. We've worked together through this kind of rough patch here with Bitcoin mining stocks. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe. The growth here has been incredible, and I'm extremely blessed by everybody that's been a part of this journey. So it's really fun. Hopefully we can keep it going. But yeah, I owe a lot of gratitude to you guys. So we've nailed it. And so I'll kind of go over everything that we've talked about in the previous live streams today, as well as I'll add some new thoughts to that. And, you know, obviously this is titled, Have Bitcoin Miners Finally Found Their Bottom? And spoiler alert, I believe they have. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump over to my Google Chrome screen. And we can see over the past 5 days, Bitcoin is up 7.6%. I said up. I meant down 7.61%. So, you know, everybody was freaking out when Bitcoin was at what? It topped out around 73,000. When it was at $73,000, and the people that owned the Bitcoin mining stocks were freaking out because the Bitcoin mining stocks weren't following it. And it's almost like the Bitcoin mining stocks knew that rally wasn't going to last because they lagged. They didn't go up with Bitcoin. And honestly, a lot of people sold out. And sentiment around the Bitcoin mining stocks was about as bad as it's been since 2022. And it happened overnight, just like that. It happened. And, you know, I've always said in the markets, if you can master the art of identifying current market sentiment for the stocks and the overall market or the Bitcoin mining stocks you own, you're probably going to outperform. I personally bought call options on CleanSpark. That's my personal pick for this industry. I'm not saying you have to own CleanSpark and owning other Bitcoin mining stocks is wrong. That's just my personal pick. But when everybody was selling out and freaking out about this, I went ahead and I made a leveraged bet on this. And so far it's worked out in a big way for me, and hopefully it'll continue to do so. So there's some background with that. And again, if you guys want access to my buy and sell alerts and all of my other due diligence, market forecasts and stuff like that, join my membership. It's the cheapest one on YouTube. Nobody has asked for a refund yet, and I have a 100% refund policy. If you don't find value, I will refund you 100%. Zero risk for you. I think I provide some of the best value on the internet, but I am biased. You know, I am biased, so take what I say with a grain of salt there. But obviously, a rising tide lifts all boats in this industry, where if Bitcoin does well, Bitcoin mining stocks are going to do well. And if Bitcoin does poorly, the Bitcoin mining stocks are going to do poorly. Any sort of divergence from that trend is probably an opportunity. It just makes sense. You know, these Bitcoin mining stocks, they're the underlying asset that they hold and they mine, and what their entire business is based off of is Bitcoin. And if the value of Bitcoin appreciates, so will the value of these companies. Otherwise, significant alpha presents itself, which is just another opportunity to outperform the markets. But yeah, it's clean. For example, let's go over this. We just mentioned over the past 5 trading days, and this actually includes the weekend for Bitcoin. It won't include it for CleanSpark and Microstrategy. But over the past 5 days for Bitcoin, it's down 7.6%. CleanSpark over the past 5 days is up 2.23%, and MicroStrategy today was down 15.69%. In my most recent live stream, I kind of talked about how I thought MicroStrategy's outperformance would be really short-lived, and it appears that it's going to be the case. I still think MicroStrategy is a great stock to own if you believe in Bitcoin. It's going to do well. A rising tide lifts all boats. I just think the better opportunity and the best play, I have this written on my notes here, the best vehicle to gain Bitcoin exposure during bull markets is owning Bitcoin mining stocks. I don't think that's going to change. And yeah, there's been a competition for capital is what I'm calling it, where there's more alternatives out there like these Bitcoin ETFs. And as a result of that, naturally, some of that capital is going to go into those ETFs. And that's going to be point number 1 of this live stream. Again, make sure you say hello in the chat and any thoughts you have. Subscribe if you're new here or returning and not yet subscribed. My channel's been growing like crazy. Incredibly blessed by you guys. So anyways, let's talk about this. This exhibit here, and thanks to H.C. Wainwright for giving me access to a lot of their due diligence and charts and graphs. They've been really good to me for no reason, but I really appreciate it. They're one of the Wall Street firms that covers Bitcoin mining stocks. So Exhibit 1 shows total spot ETF daily net flows since the launch in millions of dollars versus the price of Bitcoin. These gaps in the bar chart are weekends. Because obviously Bitcoin ETFs, because they trade during market hours, you're not going to have inflows or outflows on weekends. And I actually think this is just a quick side note. I think this is something the markets are eventually going to figure out. But if you're trying to accumulate Bitcoin right now and you don't feel like you have enough, I personally think the best time to accumulate Bitcoin is actually on weekends, because on weekends, the buying imbalance kind of settles down because there's no inflows going into the Bitcoin ETFs. And these Bitcoin ETFs settle their trades during the market week and during market hours. So you're really going to see the buying imbalance rear its head during the market week. Over the weekends, I think it's going to be a pattern that Bitcoin either downtrends or it's just flat over the weekend. So I think that's actually going to be the best time to buy Bitcoin. Quick side note for you there. But I have this in my notes. Since the launch of Bitcoin ETFs, I got to find it. My notes aren't as organized as I thought they were. We've had $11 billion of net inflows going straight to Bitcoin ETFs. And obviously those inflows mean Bitcoin ETFs are going to purchase Bitcoin with those inflows. But if you're a Bitcoin mining stock investor, it's actually a good example of why Bitcoin mining stocks have been underperforming short term. Do you think this $11 billion of inflows that came to Bitcoin ETFs was sitting on the sidelines? It just wasn't doing anything and it wasn't invested? Probably not. It used to be the case that Bitcoin mining stocks were the only pure play if you wanted exposure to Bitcoin, and it was a leveraged play to Bitcoin. Even MicroStrategy was not a pure play, and it still remains not a pure play to Bitcoin. Well, all of a sudden, introduce these Bitcoin ETFs, and it's another alternative to get a pure play exposure to Bitcoin itself. Naturally, that's going to lead to some outflows of Bitcoin mining stocks and inflows to these Bitcoin ETFs. Key couple words here. This is a short-term catalyst, a very short-term catalyst. Eventually, all of the money that was in these Bitcoin mining stocks that wanted to leave and go to the Bitcoin ETFs will have done so. This selling imbalance of Bitcoin mining stocks will level off, and I think over the last few trading days, we've started to see that. So again, that's reason number 1, they've underperformed, and it's a short-term catalyst that should fix itself over the short term, and it's not going to prove to be a long-term catalyst. So let's really talk about this and why I believe Bitcoin mining stocks still are the best vehicle to gain Bitcoin exposure during bull markets. Well, let's look at this. Exhibit 2, Bitcoin versus public miner index performance year to date in 2024. Okay, so throughout 2024, Bitcoin itself is up 74%, while the Bitcoin miner index is down 17%. Quite a dichotomy. This is not rare. This is not, we've seen this before in Bitcoin bull markets, and I'll zoom out a little bit more here for you. The miner index consists of Bitfarms, BitDeer, Cypher Mining, CleanSpark, Hive, Hut, Iron, Mara, Riot, and Wolf. So basically the biggest Bitcoin mining stocks out there. Year to date, they have lagged significantly. Now, this, like I just said, this is not new. We've gone through periods in past bull cycles where miners will underperform, and I've already mentioned one of those reasons today. I'll give you 3 more here in a little bit, but this is just kind of giving you some background on it. So far throughout 2024, it's a fact. Bitcoin miners have really struggled compared to the price of Bitcoin. But I think this is going to change, and it's going to change quickly. So let's look at this. Exhibit 6. This shows you the Bitcoin versus Bitcoin miner performance during the 2020 and 2021 bull cycle. Obviously, every time is going to be different. During 2020 and during 2021, there was a record amount of liquidity, literally free money that the Fed was giving to people. And what a lot of those people did was they invested that money. The amount of discretionary income, so extra income after expenses that consumers had during 2020 and 2021 was at record highs, and we might never reach those levels again. So that was a little bit different back then. But even so, we can look at this and see the price of Bitcoin throughout 2020 and 2021 appreciated 1,247%. The Bitcoin miner index, the same one that I showed you year to date for 2024 just a slide ago, was up 5,103%. Significant outperformance. And you'll see, yeah, there's times in here, like right here. Hopefully you can see this on the screen. It might be a little bit small, but this time period here, the Bitcoin miner index significantly lagged what Bitcoin did during this time period of June 2021 through, August, September of 2021. The Bitcoin miner index was down significantly while Bitcoin was relatively flat. So don't freak out and think this is a new thing. It's not. There's always different catalysts out there impacting the price of Bitcoin and impacting the price and the value of these Bitcoin mining stocks. Again, 2020 and 2021 was different. We're never going to have a bull cycle identical to this one, but just relax. There have been times in the past where Bitcoin miners have significantly lagged, but it's a fact that every bull cycle that Bitcoin miners have existed for, which obviously it's not a very big sample size, but they have significantly outperformed, and this is unlikely to change. The next slide here shows you the Bitcoin versus miner index performance last year in 2023, where my argument here was and I'll talk about this a little bit more and we'll consider 2024 as well, but Bitcoin miners did front run this move with Bitcoin quite a bit. In 2023, the Bitcoin miner index was up 384%, while Bitcoin itself was up 153%. So basically 2.5 times the performance of Bitcoin itself. Miners returned that for investors. That's a really good return for 1 year in the stock market, 384%. But again, we think back to 2022 when everybody was bearish. This goes back to if you can be a master of identifying sentiment in the markets and you're buying healthy companies that are just being trashed for no reason. I think of PayPal, I think of Tesla currently. If you buy when nobody else wants those sorts of companies and those sorts of stocks, you're going to outperform the markets. That's a given fact if you have patience. And this is this is just another example of that, right? Another example of this. Nobody wanted Bitcoin miners in 2022, except me and some of you that watched my channel back in 2022, and we've capitalized on this. So, Bitcoin miners, they'll always be subject to traders. There's going to be a lot of traders in Bitcoin mining stocks, which is part of the reason you're going to have outperformance and underperformance and outperformance and underperformance again. But overall, when traders sell their mining stocks, like over the last couple of weeks when they sold to take profits or whatever they did, they were selling their stock to long-term investors, long-term holders, long-term believers in Bitcoin, like myself. And we've capitalized on this with my channel here back in 2022 when I was buying when nobody else wanted to. We've been capitalizing off of everybody else that's been late to this. And that's something I strive to do on this channel. Now, the last thing I want to mention here is, bear cycles. We've seen this. In 2022, it was rough. And we're going to see another bear cycle with Bitcoin again. We will. It's inevitable. At some point, we will see this again. This is just one of the risks. Just know the risks. If you want to invest in Bitcoin mining stocks, know the risks of it. Bitcoin miners will significantly outperform Bitcoin in a bull market, but the opposite is true, where they will significantly underperform Bitcoin in a bear market. If you invested in Bitcoin miners at the top of the market in 2021 and you held throughout the 2022 bear cycle, you would have lost 94% of your money. If you invested $10,000, you would have what, $6,000 or $600 left at the bottom. I think that's accurate. I might have to check my math there again. But that is a lot of pain. 94%. And this isn't even considering the people that probably bought long-term call options back here at the peak of the market, right? So know the risks with investing into these companies. Highly risky. What I say is, don't put money into these stocks that you're not willing to lose. And if you are emotional about the last couple weeks is a great example. If you were emotional during those times and you really wanted to hit the sell button because these stocks weren't going up and you were freaking out about it, chances are you probably have too much cash invested into these companies. And that's okay. Everybody's risk tolerance is different. But it's really important to manage your risk tolerance, because as soon as your emotions enter this investing discussion, that's when you'll start to make some big, big mistakes. Now, I do want to mention, I don't believe, and I might be different than a lot of other influencers out there, but I think independently, I think you guys know that at this point, I don't believe that Bitcoin miners are ever going to see 94% down again. I just don't think it's going to happen, because this space is changing so dramatically with institutional capital finally entering this space, which I think is going to provide a higher floor for the price of Bitcoin. And as a result, that'll provide a higher floor for the price of these Bitcoin mining stocks. And, you also have to think there's a learning curve here with Bitcoin mining companies and lenders where, during 2020 and during 2021, you saw a lot of these Bitcoin mining companies with management teams that didn't have much business pedigree to their names. They were taking out really bad debt deals. They got way ahead of their skis and they paid the price during the 2022 bear cycle. But with every new technology, every new industry, there's a learning cycle. There's a learning curve. And you know what? I can guarantee you the people that want to lend money to this space are not going to form debt deals in identical ways to the way they did prior to the 2022 bear cycle, because a lot of people, including the lenders, lost a lot of money. So the debt in this space is going to be smarter debt, at least I hope. Usually that's the way things go after companies lose their butts and lenders lose their butts. They learn from it. And again, that's another reason why the Bitcoin miner index performed so poorly during 2022, is because of these bad debt deals. Next, you had a bunch of dilution. You had a lot of dilution to either pay that debt or to simply stay afloat as a company. These companies at this point in time, most of them have diluted hundreds of millions of dollars, there we go, worth of shares. They have hundreds of millions of shares outstanding now. And naturally, that means that we're going to see less dilution moving forward. If a stock price is higher, it means you have to dilute less to raise the same amount of capital. And you also have the fact that more than likely with this industry, and I think we've already started to see it, the big will get bigger and the small will get squashed. It's a lot like farming. I've said this on my channel before. I'm a fourth generation farmer. Unfortunately, it's a lot like farming. The big will get bigger and the small will get squashed. And as the big get bigger, they'll be healthier companies, because they will dominate the total Bitcoin network hash rate. They will mine more Bitcoin because they dominate more of the market share for mining Bitcoin, right? So in my personal opinion, I could be wrong. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a 22-year-old, almost 23, that's nerdy enough to have a stock market channel on YouTube where I talk about stocks. I don't know anybody else my age that's this nerdy about stocks. But and I've been correct. You can go back on my channel since late 2022. We've been kicking the market's butt, absolutely kicking it. Eventually that's going to end. I'm not oblivious to that, but we have a pretty good track record here on this channel, and I'm proud of that. So next, let's talk about a little bit. Next reason why Bitcoin miners have underperformed. It's been the miners' concerns about profitability after the halving cycle, right? So let's look at this. And this, again, is thanks to H.C. Wainwright, who is a Wall Street analyst on Wall Street, obviously, for the Bitcoin mining space and the Bitcoin space in general. So thank you to them for giving me access to this information. I don't know why they're so good to me, but they are. This exhibit shows you the average Bitcoin miner production costs post-halving according to their estimates versus the current Bitcoin price. This shows you that, just a few months ago, many of these Bitcoin miners were not going to be profitable post-halving. This has changed really quickly in the snap of a fingers, where the average direct production cost, and this is a little bit blurry, I don't know why, the average direct production costs for the largest miners in the space are $32,246. The average all-in production costs for the largest miners in the space, $42,559. The current Bitcoin price, it's not $73,000 anymore, but it's upper 60,000s, and I'm guessing it's going to continue to trend higher, right? A lot of these companies that weren't safe before are now safe. They're safe. And a lot of these companies that we thought might fail before are going to make it through. So again, another short-term catalyst that has led to the underperformance of these Bitcoin mining stocks. This isn't going to last if the price of Bitcoin stays the same, because it's very profitable for the largest miners to mine Bitcoin right now. Sure, you're going to have the very small companies that don't have very attractive power deals or don't have very efficient mining fleets. They'll go bust or they'll get bought out in some sense, but the largest of the miners, again, the bigger are going to get bigger and the smaller are going to get squashed, like I've been saying. They're going to survive this. It's no longer as risky to invest into these Bitcoin mining stocks as it was previously. And as the price of Bitcoin continues to go higher and higher, this adds even more safety to owning, to owning these Bitcoin mining stocks. Next, let me make sure I mention everything I wanted to with that. Let's talk about transaction fees. This is something that a lot of people aren't considering that I think is a realistic possibility. Is I think transaction fees, which is another part of the revenue that Bitcoin miners can claim, I think transaction fees are going to go up because of demand for Bitcoin ordinals. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. I think it's a bunch of fluff, honestly, but it's still money. It's basically Bitcoin NFTs. I don't think NFTs... I haven't been convinced on NFTs yet, so I'm not very optimistic on ordinals, but hey, if people want to spend money on it, these miners are going to benefit from it, right? So that's another thing. The revenue concentration is likely to change a little bit from purely the Bitcoin that they mine and the revenue they receive from the Bitcoin they mine, but also I think the amount of revenue they get from transaction fees is likely to double. Right now, it's around 7 to 8% of these mining companies' revenue is because of transaction fees. I could see that going to 15 to 16% throughout 2024. Again, adding a margin of safety to this. It's just another revenue stream. That's what it is. And any increased revenue you can get as a Bitcoin mining company increases your margins, which, again, decreases risk of owning these companies. By the way, 200 people watching this right now. That's awesome. Again, if you're new here, returning, not yet subscribed, please subscribe down below. I've been incredibly blessed. My channel's been growing like crazy thanks to this amazing community, you guys watching this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. The last reason I want to talk about that Bitcoin miners have probably been underperforming is the fact that dilution is a big risk with these companies. We saw it throughout 2022. I've kind of already talked about how I think dilution is going to calm down quite a bit, but it is a risk. We talked about how just a few months ago, a few months ago, we weren't sure if a lot of these companies were going to be able to mine profitably. We weren't sure if a lot of these companies were going to be able to make it through the halving event. Well, really quickly, that's changed, and a lot of these companies are going to make it through, and right or wrong, because a lot of these companies now believe they're going to make it through, what are they going to do? Oh, we're profitable now. Let's expand, right? Well, you have to get cash somewhere to expand, and a lot of these companies, they hold on to their production. This is the first industry I've ever seen, that somehow makes money with their business operations without selling the product that they create, it's different. You know, I always like to say with Bitcoin mining companies, they don't sell a product, they sell shares of stock. They dilute you. They sell shares of stock to investors. That's their business, right? And I think, again, that's going to cool off a little bit, but this is a big deal. A lot of these companies are going to choose to expand now, and expansion likely leads to dilution. I believe more debt capital is going to enter this industry, and safer debt capital. And you can see, based on a Bitcoin price of $73,350, a network hash rate of 575 exahash per second, and transaction fees contributing 5% of total block rewards, the total payback period on the S21s, which is the most efficient Bitcoin mining rig you can get your hands on right now, is only 368 days. A lot of the biggest Bitcoin mining companies, they've gone out and they've signed purchase agreements for S21 mining rigs. And the payback period is right at 1 year. So to pay off a mining rig, you have to use it for a year. Anything past that year is going to be pure profit, essentially. It's a little more complicated than that. But this is the payback period on an investment in a Bitcoin miner. It looks really attractive right now to expand, to buy new mining rigs, to buy these highly efficient rigs, right? These companies are going to do this. Dilution is a risk. But again, it's a short-term risk. So there's 3 or 4 reasons why Bitcoin miners have underperformed, and all 3 or 4 of those reasons are short-term risks that really should kind of work themselves out. And as a result of that, as these risks fade, as the fear, uncertainty, and doubt surrounding these risks fade, the Bitcoin mining stocks should resume their upwards price trajectory. And over the last few trading days, we've seen that. I think it's going to continue. So here's a fun stat for you. I don't have a page that'll show this, but here's a really fun stat for you. Keep this in the back of your mind. Maybe write it down somewhere. It's estimated that it's a lot of money to the average Joe, but it only costs these companies $25 million to bring on an additional 1 exahash per second of mining capacity. And according to the stock market, they assign $125 million of market value for every 1 exahash per second that these companies mine or operate, right? So it's a $25 million investment upfront to bring on an additional 1 exahash per second and expand your operations for a reward from the market of an increase in market value of $125 million. It's a 5x return on your investment. So it's very likely that the companies right now that are building and signing these really attractive expansion deals for these really highly efficient mining rigs, it's likely that they're going to be rewarded for it because the investment return looks very good right now. The payback period is relatively short if you choose to expand. So it's another reason why more expansion is likely to happen, right? But it's a short-term catalyst. And ultimately, if you're choosing to expand as a Bitcoin mining company right now, you're probably going to benefit from it long term. Now, every cycle's different. I'm sure this ratio of $125 million of market value added for every $25 million you invest into growing your operations, that ratio is not going to stay the same. It'll normalize a little bit, right? As this industry matures, things normalize a little bit. The volatility is going to cool off a little bit. But I thought that was a really interesting statistic to keep in the back of your mind. So yeah, write that down maybe so you remember that one. Okay. The last thing I wanted to mention, then I can get to the chat here really quickly, is the price of Bitcoin. These 20 to 30% drawdowns in the price of Bitcoin, people are mistaken and they believe that they only happen during bear markets. It's not true. It's not true. Every single bull cycle that Bitcoin has seen so far, and every time could be different, right? You've seen 20 to 30% drawdowns in the price of Bitcoin, but ultimately it's kept going up during the bull cycle. This makes it really difficult to trade, very difficult to trade. And it's something that I've mentioned, and I've gotten some flack for it on the internet from other Bitcoin influencers, or traders, I call them. People think you can perfectly predict the price of Bitcoin. That is a huge mistake. This is like my biggest pet peeve with this industry. They think the market for the price of Bitcoin is perfectly predictable. You can compare this cycle to the previous cycles and you will know exactly where the price of Bitcoin is going to go. And I am going to do it this time. I'm going to front run this. I'm going to buy in at the bottom and I'm going to sell at the exact top because I can time it out perfectly because the market has done this in the past. And I have all these charts and indicators telling me this. It's a bunch of crap. Think about it. Think about this logically, guys. Think about this. I'm sorry for the rant, but think about this. This is how markets work. If anything in the markets is predictable and it's a surefire way to make money, you know what's going to happen. You're not going to be the only one that tries to front run the cycle and maximize your profits. Everybody else in the markets are going to try to do the same thing. And all of a sudden, a perfectly predictable market for Bitcoin becomes perfectly unpredictable because everybody has front run it. So there's no such thing as a perfectly predictable market. You can put that on my gravestone. I think people that claim that are silly. I think that's maybe the stupidest thing anybody could ever say about the price of Bitcoin. Sure, there are things that are going to be the same every cycle, like the block reward getting cut in half for mining stocks. That's always going to be the same. There's going to be a reduction in new supply every 4 years. That's always going to be the same. But a market is a market. There is no such thing as a perfectly predictable market. Bitcoin is not an exception to that. And we've already seen this play out. This is the first time we've hit a new all-time high prior to the halving event. And a lot of investors don't know what to do now. They didn't think this would happen because Bitcoin is perfectly predictable. Unbelievable, in my opinion. I don't believe that for a second. This is a really tough thing to trade. And people are going to continue to try and do this and make money. And they're going to post their gains, their $10,000 wins. They're not going to post their losses. I've seen this time and time again. They're not going to post their losses. They're going to make it seem like they're making a ton of money. And it's going to convince more and more people that you can trade Bitcoin and you can make a killing doing it. And I believe you can. I believe there's people out there that can do that. But it's very difficult because, again, in bull cycles in the past, we've seen 20 to 30% drawdowns before Bitcoin just rockets back to a new all-time high. And when you're down 20 to 30%, your emotions enter the equation. Now, I don't care who you are. Your emotions enter the equation to some degree. And the more emotions that are involved in your investing and decisions, the more mistakes you're going to make. So maybe I'm wrong. I seem to be the only one that really, stands on a rock and preaches this. But I don't believe for a second that you can perfectly time Bitcoin based on its previous cycles. I think that is so silly. There are new catalysts affecting the price of Bitcoin every single cycle we get. There are certain catalysts that are going to remain the same, but man, there is so much that you cannot predict. Think back to 2020, right? I would argue that the cycle of Bitcoin, it didn't enter a bear market because it's Bitcoin and it's always perfectly predictable. That's not why. It just so happened we got a black swan event with the pandemic. And, that led to a short-term parabolic rise, but then inflation got out of hand. Oh, liquidity in the system is going to go down because the Fed has to tighten financial conditions. Down goes the price of Bitcoin. There are so many black swans and unpredictable events out there. You cannot perfectly predict the price of Bitcoin like so many people believe. But again, maybe I'm wrong. I seem to be the only one that's preaching this. Anyways, I have a little bit of time now for the chat. If anybody has questions, let me know. I appreciate everybody's support. This is incredible. Over 200 people watching me rant about Bitcoin, right? I wake up every day feeling so blessed thanks to you guys. So thank you. Again, if you're new here, returning, not yet subscribed, please subscribe down below. My channel's been growing extremely fast. I just can't thank you guys enough. So let me get to the chat here really quick. Stephen Andrews asks, will miners rise going into the halving? Conversely, will they fall after the halving? Again, I think this goes back to you simply can't predict it. In my personal opinion, I think Bitcoin's going to have a really strong next 6, 12, 18 months. And some other people won't agree with that. That's just my personal opinion. And if the price of Bitcoin does well, the mining stocks are going to do well. Sure, you're going to have time periods where you feel a lot of pain, down 20%, down 30%, down 40%. But over the long term, I believe owning Bitcoin mining stocks is going to be a really, really good move. A really good move. A rising tide lifts all boats. And if the price of Bitcoin keeps going up, the margins of these companies are going to keep going up. And per share, you're going to have more claims to the earnings of these companies, right? And if you invest into companies that are growing profitably, your portfolio is more than likely going to grow profitably as well. It might take a little patience, but geez, I have patience, right? It's what I do on this channel. I find undervalued companies that everybody hates. Nobody wants to own them. Give them to me, man. Tesla right now, give it to me. PayPal, give it to me, right? CleanSpark in 2022, Bitcoin miners in 2022, give it to me. I cannot get my hands on enough of this, right? Overall, I think long-term Bitcoin miners are going to be a really good investment. I think the floor for Bitcoin mining stocks is going to go up a lot. Let me see if I can find this tab again. Previous bear cycle right here, where the Bitcoin miners lost 94%. You can rewind. I'll leave this stream up for replay, but you can rewatch this segment. I just don't think we're going to see a minus 94% return for the miner index ever again for several reasons. You can go back and watch that part of the stream if you want to. Nigel asks, when will dilution stop for the miners? I don't think it ever will stop fully because right now the potential return from holding on to Bitcoin versus selling it looks so good. And a company can... The return for a company if they sell shares of stock versus if they sell their Bitcoin, there's a huge difference right there. And sure, they're biased. They believe Bitcoin is going to appreciate over the long term, but that's not what we're analyzing here. We're analyzing if dilution is going to stop. I don't think it ever will. I think it will cool down significantly. Like if you think about, let's just look at CleanSpark here. I'll go to the Yahoo Finance page. They have over 100 million shares outstanding now. Close to 200 million shares outstanding. In the past, their shares outstanding was closer to $60 million. And as they've diluted, obviously, it's a bigger number, year over year change in the amount of dilution. Well, you know, if you can do the math on this, but if you sell 20 million more shares and you already have 200 million shares outstanding, that's only 10% dilution. Whereas in the past, say you had 20 million shares outstanding, which used to be the case for CleanSpark, by the way, and they sold another $20 million of shares or 20 million shares to raise capital, that's 100% dilution, right? It's a big difference there. So I think dilution is going to slow down, but I don't think it'll ever completely stop. But the impact it's going to have on share prices is going to come down significantly. So let's go to the next question here. What are your thoughts on leap options on BitX? I actually don't know. What was BitX? I don't remember. Is that one of the ETFs? Oh, it's a 2X leveraged ETF. I'd rather get my leverage by owning the Bitcoin miners than a 2X leveraged ETF, which isn't a guarantee to get 2X return, right? I mean, this is still somebody managing your money for you. You have to pay fees. I would rather just do it myself, own the Bitcoin mining stocks, right? I'd rather do that myself, not pay the fee, maximize my profits. But, you know, buying leap call options, I have no issue with that if you believe in Bitcoin long term. Okay, let's keep scrolling down here. Scott asks, Rex, do you think Fed on Wednesday will make any difference on price for these Bitcoin mining companies? I don't. I think I think we're entering a short-term time frame here, basically till after the halving event takes place, where Bitcoin is going to separate itself from the markets. We've seen some time periods like this in the past. It doesn't ever last super long, but I actually think Bitcoin's going to perform really well, and the miners will as a result of that, versus I think the markets or the Fed is going to take some interest rate cuts out of the equation here coming up If you watch my most recent video on the channel, highly recommend you do that. You'll see my thoughts on the current market and what I think the Fed's going to do and how that'll affect the markets. I'm short-term bearish on the markets. I am. There's way too many bulls. I'm not going to explain all of it in this live stream, but go watch that video after this live stream. Explains my thoughts there. But I do think Bitcoin's going to kind of separate itself from the markets here. I think a lot of these Bitcoin miners, I don't think interest rates impact them as much as people think. And I think a lot of that, these increased or normalized, is what I call them, interest rates, have already been discounted in the Bitcoin mining stocks. Okay. Can Bitcoin go to $1 million? Absolutely. Absolutely. Institutional adoption is still very, very low. The people that are buying Bitcoin largely are holding Bitcoin. You think of countries, you think of billionaires, you think of the fact there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever in existence. You think of the fact that a lot of that supply has been lost. You think about the fact that Satoshi's coins are inaccessible. And it leads to an equation where, yes, Bitcoin could absolutely hit $1 million. Okay, when is your cycle top for CleanSpark? Best guess? I don't really have one at this point. I don't think we're anywhere close to it. If I had to guess, I don't know. Sometime 2025, 2026 would be my guess. I think 2024 is going to be a tremendous year to own CleanSpark and these Bitcoin-related investments. Okay. Rex, it's me from Twitter. Cheers, my brother. You're the best. Hey, thanks, Eric. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, the support you guys have been showing me is crazy. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. What do I think of Cannon and Moss and Infrastructure Group? Those are a couple examples of Bitcoin-related investments that I don't want anything to do with. Why put even more risk into an already risky investment, right? Bitcoin is risky. You own Bitcoin mining stocks. It adds even more risk to the risky investment in Bitcoin. You add a crappy Bitcoin mining company to that equation, and you add even more risk to it. It's just risk that with my personal risk tolerance, I'm not really willing to take. Sure, they could outperform. I'm not saying they won't. But to me, the performance I would get from owning CleanSpark is good enough. I don't want to get greedy. I don't want to get too greedy. Those are my thoughts there. Okay. I think I'm caught up on all the questions here, and I do have to get running. I have a birthday party for my girlfriend's niece that I need to get to here really soon. Do you think I'll answer this one quick, then I'll end it. Again, if you're new here, returning not yet subscribed, please subscribe down below. Extremely blessed, very appreciative of you guys and this amazing community that's been backing me. Also, the like button for me, that helps me out tremendously. Can Bitfarms 10 to 15x? I don't even know what Bitfarms is trading at today. $2.23. Absolutely. I think so. The thing you're getting with Bitfarms is a lot of their operations are outside of the United States of America, which actually could be a bullish catalyst for it at some point in the future. You have all this regulatory framework that is really nebulous right now in the United States of America. You have potential taxes coming to Bitcoin mining stocks in America, where they're taxing the energy that the Bitcoin miners are using. That was like a 30% tax was the proposal. I don't think that's going to go through. But those are risks that Bitfarms is not subject to. So there are some benefits with that. There's some downfalls with not being in the United States. But if Bitcoin does well, if Bitcoin goes to $1 million, like I think is possible. I think that's possible by 2030. Absolutely. I think Bitfarms could go to $30 a share. I don't think there's any question about it. No question about it. And honestly, I think Bitfarms is a pretty well-run company. It's been a while since I've done my research into them. But all in all, I think it's a pretty well-run company. And that's what you have to look for in this space. And a risky new investment, you have to look for management teams that execute. They meet their guidance and their projections. Where they're efficient, right? Those are the things you have to look at. That's what separates these companies. And that's why I've made a killing on CleanSpark. They have the best management team in the space. At least they have in the past. That's subject to change. And the markets weren't properly valuing that in 2022, right? I've capitalized on that. As the markets have started to realize, oh, CleanSpark's management team actually is the best. Rex was kind of right about that. You know, they've started to buy in. I think that's something you could absolutely see with Bitfarms, who hasn't been getting a lot of respect. Okay, I think I'm going to end this here. Thank you guys all for watching. This was incredible. I'll leave this up for replay. I don't know if I'll get the timestamps up immediately because, like I said, I have that birthday party to go to. And I also made taco soup in the crock pot. I'm looking forward to that tonight. But this was really fun. Thank you guys all for coming out. I'm extremely blessed. I don't know how many times I've said it. I'll never get tired of saying it because it'll never be untrue, regardless of my situation, regardless of if my channel falls off. Extremely blessed by whoever chooses to watch me. So thank you guys. I'll leave this up for replay. I'll try and get this time-stamped in a couple of hours. It won't be time-stamped immediately, but yeah, I truly believe I have the best community out there, and it's thanks to you guys watching this. So, yeah, I don't want to sign off because I have so much fun doing this and talking to you guys, but unfortunately, life calls, right? I do have my duties, so I better take off. Thank you guys all for coming out. Please hit that like button for me. It helps me out tremendously. And again, if you're new here, returning, not yet subscribed, please subscribe. Have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. I'll have a video out tomorrow. This is probably the last live stream on this topic that I'll do, unless we start to underperform again for whatever reason. But I think the underperformance has come to an end. And I think Bitcoin miners are going to reaccelerate and really start to perform the way they have in past bull cycles. So feel free to rewatch this. I'll leave it up for replay. Thank you, everybody. Stay blessed.